Hi, I'm Rebecca and I'm the founder of Soundboard Asia, and this is my story. I'm from Singapore and I moved to Korea maybe 3 years ago from New York, and I started my company last year in Korea and I'm looking to kind of grow it at the moment. In the meantime, I'm also working in the entertainment, media and marketing field. So I'm consulting at the same time, like doing a lot of stuff in the media space. In school, I think in most Asian schools, I think a lot of kids were taught to kind of like just study and memorize. My parents were really strict with grades and how I should be studying. So yeah, I often just went with the flow and did whatever they wanted me to do up until university. At the moment, I told my mom, like, I really want to do something different. Like maybe study a language, do something artsy. And she's like, no. She's like, don't do that. You should do something that's like scientific, something to do with the economy. So I picked something really strange, like material science. I hated it. I really hated it so much because a lot of the time we spent in the lab. So I was wearing the lab coat, just working on experiments. It's not my personality. I really like meeting people. I like interacting with people and understanding what makes them tick. In the lab, you don't really do that. So fine, I graduated and I started working in a bank. Didn't enjoy it at all. So I quit my job in a bank, started an intern in an advertising agency with like peanuts almost. But I worked really hard to get them to kind of create a position for me. So I worked there for 2.5 years. But then I got really bored after some time. I was like, okay, it's interesting because it's marketing, you know, it's business. But as part of an advertising agency, you don't really have any control over the strategy or like, oh, what kind of interesting advertising is going to go out today in that billboard, for example. Like, you don't have any say about that. It's mostly coming from the clients. And so I told my parents that I wanted to go to the US to study. And they were like, what? Especially my mom. She's very conservative and my dad's on the other extreme. He's very open-minded. He's like, he loves to travel. So I took the test. I got in. So I went to University of California, Berkeley. In San Francisco, when we were living there, it's just, everyone's so free. So if you've been there, you know, like, it's hippie town, right? So everyone's like super chill, relaxed. It's unlike New York in a way, so East Coast, West Coast is completely different. But I really appreciated that lifestyle. So I spent 2 years in San Francisco before coming back. I wanted to find a job at the time, but because there was a 2008 economy crisis, all the companies were really conservative about hiring. So I was forced to kind of go back to Singapore. But I'm kind of glad I did because shortly after my mom fell sick, like she was really, really sick. And within 6 months, like she passed away. So for me and my dad, we were like in shock almost because I never thought she would leave so quickly. So at that time, I really wanted to leave Singapore because I didn't feel like my place was there. If you're born and raised in this country and you're pulled out of it, you experience something else. And then when you come back, you're kind of forced to go back into this box. I couldn't do that. I was very cautious that my dad was still emotionally broken. So I kind of spent 7 years with him in Singapore just to ensure that he's, you know, able to get back on his feet. At the same time, like find his new way of life. Yeah, and then one day I remember I was in a business trip in Korea, actually here. And then I called him and I said, Dad, I don't think I could just go like back and forth from Singapore to like different countries, because that's what my job was. The fun thing about my job was I was based in Singapore, but I could go to different countries in East Asia, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea. So these were the places that I mostly traveled to. At some point, I felt like I wanted to build a life somewhere else. So I explained to him, of course in tears, and I was very heartbroken because it's not easy for me to just take off and leave my dad. I'm the only child as well. So the responsibility to take care of my father as an Asian kid was there, you know? So I felt like, oh, if I left him, that's that. But he was really cool about it. He was like, oh, I totally understand. If you have to go, you should try. So I asked my boss at the time to transfer me to the US office. So that's where I went to New York. So at that point when I was working in New York, I was tasked to like sign all these deals for like a year. Just to say, I was working in the content business, which means like I had to work with all these media companies to sign contracts with them. I thought to myself, maybe going back to Asia would be a more practical choice, not only to learn and develop my career, because I saw myself long-term in Asia anyways. Furthermore, I was worried about my father, because every time we flew back it would take like 24 hours, right? So for me, that was pretty taxing. So I decided like, oh, maybe I should think about Asia. When I was in Singapore, I did study Korean for 3 years, but at that time I could only read and listen. I couldn't write or speak. So if I heard like Korean people speak to me, I couldn't say a word. But I understood what they were saying. It's just like I couldn't express myself. So I was like telling some of my close friends in New York, like, oh, maybe I should go to Korea and study like Korean. And they looked at me like, why? I was like, actually it's like kind of stupid if I say I studied Korean for 3 years, but I only read and listen. I don't write and speak. That's why I came here. I attended Language Institute for 9 months. And then I told myself like, okay, maybe not anymore. At that time, I think I really wanted to continue staying in Korea because my own purpose or goal that I set for myself was, unless I can be speaking Korean on demand whenever and at a comfortable level, I won't leave this country. That was what I thought to myself. So then the very natural thing was to find opportunities to stay. I could clearly go back to school, take a, I don't know, PhD level or something, or I could find a job and work for a Korean company, which is extremely difficult, as we all know. And then the last is obviously to start my own business. And so out of the three, I picked the last one to start my business. In 2016, I realized there was a lack of information about what's happening in the media industry in Asia. There was a lot of interest from people in the US and Europe as well. Like, what's going on in Asia? Tell us. But not only within Asia alone. Like, if I traveled to Taiwan, they were like, Rebecca, you always go to Korea. Can you tell us what's the trend right now for content? What are people doing there? What are they shooting? What drama genres are popular? And I was like, how come you guys don't know this? You're in the business too, right? You know? But then I realized also because in Taiwan, they obviously use very different search engines, and Korea is the same, right? We have different social media platforms. So if you're not really in the market, you're not local, you don't know the language, it's extremely difficult to exchange that information across. There's so much talk about video platforms here, like the top ones. Well, not Netflix, but like Wave, Watcha, even Melon, these guys, right? You try searching on Google, you find nothing. On Naver, tons of information. A lot of news networks are trying to change that right now. They're trying to translate as quickly as they can from Korean to English. But I still think that there's a severe lack of information, not just for one specific sector in TV, but also in film, music, and digital, like production, everything. I'm trying to use my platform to weave all of that together. It's not gonna be, I'm not gonna say we're gonna cover everything, but at least I want to bring a different perspective to what Asian entertainment looks like in English for people who are interested about it, who wants to know what's going on in Asia. I think that's the platform I'm trying to build right now. For Soundboard Asia, I think when we try to create a platform, or at least do a mindset shift when it comes to like media in Asia, right? So there's a lot of assumptions about what Asia is known for. For example, I was in the US, I remember, and then people was like, oh, if you talk about K-pop, it's only about BTS and Blackpink. I got a little bit tired of listening to that at some point, because I'm like, guys, there's really a lot more going on other than BTS and Blackpink. I admit they're doing a fantastic job, no doubt about that. But I think there's a lot of mid-level like companies or even artists who are doing extremely creative stuff that's really not told out there. And like I said, different platforms, right? Different platforms in the local language, and people just don't know how to search. Plus the fact that if you're not from a big company or big label, it's very likely that you don't have the marketing budget too. So it's limited to what kind of creative stuff you can put out there to market yourself. So I would like to use Soundboard Asia as that platform to kind of bring to light these creative ideas. I think that's super important. There's always just gonna be like huge media outlets that would cover the BTS and Blackpinks of the world, but I don't think you need someone like me to do that. What I really want to do is more discover the different types of creativity that's available out here in Asia. It doesn't have to be only in Korea. Like, I'd love to start from Korea and then eventually like branch out to different parts of Asia with the fact that I've already been around in Asia. Thank you for listening to my story today, and stay tuned for the next episode.